who did this.
The movie begins with a man named Nick, who lives in Las Vegas. Nick is a skilled fighter, but he also spends much of his time around gambling. That's where his story starts. At the beginning, we see Nick sitting inside a restaurant. A woman walks in, and Nick can't take his eyes off her. Soon after, her boyfriend arrives and proposes to her right there. Instead of minding his own business, Nick walks over and starts bothering them. The couple leaves the restaurant, but Nick follows them outside and picks a fight. The boyfriend ends up beating Nick and forces him to apologize. After Nick does, the woman happily accepts her boyfriend's proposal. The scene then shifts to a car speeding through the night. A young woman named Holly is thrown out of the car, badly beaten. She's rushed to the hospital, but when asked who attacked her, she can't give any names. After treatment, the focus moves back to Nick. Nick arrives at a place called the Silver Spoon, where he usually handles most of his business. There, he meets a man named Cyrus. Cyrus explains that he loves gambling, but he feels like someone is following him and fears for his life. He asks Nick to act as his protection whenever he goes to the casino. Nick agrees to take the job. Later that night, Nick is back at the same restaurant. The man who beat him earlier approaches and thanks him. He says that because of Nick, his girlfriend accepted the proposal. He then pays Nick $500, revealing the fight was staged from the start. Afterward, Nick heads into a bar, where a waitress tells him that someone wants to meet him. It turns out to be Holly, who Nick already knows as a friend. When he goes to her house, Nick is shocked and upset to see the terrible state she's in after being beaten so badly. Holly's face is covered in wounds. Nick asks her who did this, and she explains what happened. The previous night, while returning from a party, she shared an elevator with a man and his two bodyguards. The man invited her to another party, but when she refused, he forced her into his room. There, he beat her and raped her. After that, both bodyguards also assaulted her. When they were done, they dumped her in front of the hospital in critical condition. Nick tells Holly that she should report them to the police, but she says she doesn't know who they are, not even their names. Instead, she offers to pay Nick to find out their identities. Nick agrees. He then goes to the hotel where Holly was attacked and speaks to a waitress, an old friend of his. She agrees to help and promises to take him to a restaurant that evening. There, she gives Nick the information he's looking for. She tells him the man's name is Danny and that he's always accompanied by his two bodyguards. But she warns Nick to stay away from them because they're extremely dangerous. Nick later passes this information on to Holly. Holly then asks him to go further, to catch Danny and his men and make them pay. Nick refuses, telling her once again to go to the police. But Holly explains that she's a drug addict, and if she goes to the police, they'll turn against her instead of helping. That's why she needs Nick to handle it. Nick doesn't give her an answer and leaves with his phone. Nick goes to meet Cyrus at his hotel and takes him to the casino. While Cyrus starts gambling, Nick can't stop thinking about Holly. She's not only a close friend, but also someone who already has a grudge against him. Nick eventually tells Cyrus that there's no real danger and that he can continue gambling, then take a taxi back to his hotel. With that, Nick leaves and heads to confront Danny and his men. At their hotel, Nick stands outside their room and rings the doorbell. One of the bodyguards opens the door and asks who he is. Nick introduces himself as an agent who provides girls. Curious, they let him in. Danny immediately asks where the girls are and whether they're beautiful. Nick replies that yes, the girl was beautiful, but then adds that yesterday they made her ugly. Danny realizes Nick is talking about Holly. Trying to brush it off, Danny offers Nick money, but Nick refuses. Danny pulls out a gun, points it at him, and demands that Nick praise him. He warns that if he believes the words are true, he'll let Nick go. Nick plays along and praises him, but the situation quickly escalates. When Nick sees things going too far, he makes his move. In a sudden fight, he kills both bodyguards and Danny. Afterward, Nick calls Holly and brings her to the room. When she arrives, she faces Danny before he dies. She reminds him of how he had forced her at gunpoint to say she loved him. Now, she forces him to do the same, threatening to cut off his private parts if she doesn't see truth in his words. Terrified, Danny breaks down and insists that he loves her. Holly intimidates him further until he's left crying. With Danny finished, Holly and Nick take his money and leave. Holly tells Nick they'll have to leave Las Vegas for good because Danny will come after them. She offers him the money, but he refuses. In the end, she insists, and Nick accepts half about $25,000. Nick takes the money to the casino and starts gambling. This time, he wins every game he plays. Cyrus later shows up, and Nick apologizes to him, telling him he doesn't need to be afraid. He explains that no one really needs a bodyguard to enter the casino, and that Cyrus is much braver than he thinks. Nick realizes that today is his lucky day and decides to keep gambling. His winning streak continues, and he walks away with $500,000. But when he goes to cash out, he starts thinking $500,000 would only last him about 5 years, and he wants enough money to leave Las Vegas forever. So he takes a risk and keeps playing. This time, luck turns against him. Nick loses everything. Devastated, he starts drinking heavily, and before long, he passes out. When he wakes up, Cyrus is sitting in front of him, offering juice. Cyrus tells Nick that he came to Las Vegas just to meet him. He explains that not long ago, he saw a man so terrified that he had written "Don't kill me" on his shirt. At first, he laughed, but then he realized that he lives in the same kind of fear, constantly afraid of people around him. That's when he decided he needed to overcome his fear. And after hearing about Nick, he thought Nick could train him to be fearless. Nick dismisses the idea, telling him he's just a kid. But Cyrus pushes back. He says that when he was only 18 or 19, he created a software program that made him a millionaire. Money isn't a problem. He can give Nick as much as he wants, but he wants Nick to make him
Let's pause for a second. If you're still with me, hit like and subscribe for more videos like this.
strong like him. Nick refuses. Nick goes back to drinking, but trouble finds him again. Some of Danny's men show up and attack him. Nick fights back fiercely and takes him down. Soon after, 2 men arrive who work for Baby, the most powerful boss in Las Vegas. Nobody dares to go against Baby. Nick is taken to meet him. Baby accuses Nick of killing Danny's 2 bodyguards and stealing Danny's money. He then brings Danny into the room. Danny claims that Nick broke into his house, shot his bodyguards, and stole his money. He insists he barely managed to survive. Nick defends himself, telling Baby that he doesn't even use guns. Everyone knows that. Baby agrees, admitting Nick has killed many people, but never with a firearm. He then demands that Nick explain what really happened. Nick tells him the truth. Danny raped a girl, and later, that same girl tortured him until he broke down crying. His bodyguards saw him in that pathetic state, and Danny killed them to keep it a secret. If Baby doesn't believe him, Nick says he should have Danny remove his pants. There will be a cut on his private part, left by the girl. Danny refuses to prove it and threatens Nick instead. That's all Baby needs to hear. He realizes Nick is telling the truth and decides to let him go. Nick goes back to a cafe and meets Cyrus again. Cyrus tells him that he has already learned so much from him, and now he knows how to live his life without fear. He explains that he will be leaving that very night, but before going, he wants to give Nick a gift. He hands him an envelope that contains a check for $500,000 and a plane ticket to another country. Nick refuses to accept it, but before they can settle the matter, Danny arrives with his men and attacks. Danny's men try to kill Nick right in front of Cyrus. In that moment of chaos, Cyrus begins singing loudly, distracting Danny and drawing everyone's attention. The diversion gives Nick the chance to escape. Danny and his men chase after him, and soon the confrontation moves to a rooftop. Nick realizes that if he doesn't end this now, Danny and his men will continue to hunt him for the rest of his life. Nick once again proves his deadly skill. He fights Danny's men with everything he has, taking them down one by one until none are left standing. In the end, he faces Danny himself and kills him, finally putting an end to the threat. Afterward, Nick prepares to leave in his car, but Cyrus approaches him one last time. He once again insists that Nick accept the check, telling him that he has been a true friend and that the money will help him start a new life. This time, Nick accepts the gift. With that, Nick finally leaves Las Vegas behind, determined to begin again somewhere new. And with his departure, the story comes to an end. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this recap, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell icon so you never miss our next story.